The first time I realized my boyfriend's family loved me more than my own. I was 23. Or at least, that's what I thought. When I started dating Luca Romano 2 years ago, stepping into his big New Jersey-based Italian-American family felt like being wrapped in a blanket straight out of the dryer. Every Sunday, his mom, Rosa, would grab my face in both hands, kiss my cheeks, and call me Bella Ragazza like I was already her daughter-in-law. His sisters, Angela and Maria, would pour me a glass of wine and drag me into their gossip about office drama or boyfriends. His dad, Giovanni, would shake his head and tell me I was too thin, then heap more pasta onto my plate with this warm laugh. They were everything my own family wasn't. See, I inherited my dad's small tech company at 21 after he passed away suddenly. Everyone assumes that means I had it easy. Poor little rich girl, right? What no one saw was how isolated it made me. My parents had been cold my whole life, and once the company became successful, my siblings stopped seeing me as their sister and started seeing me as a walking ATM. The only time they called was when they needed something. But Luca's family? They seemed different. They seemed to actually care about me. At first, I didn't even mind when they slipped into Italian at the dinner table. I couldn't understand a word, but their faces lit up, and they'd glance at me with kind eyes before switching back to English. It felt like being included even when I wasn't. So I tried to give back. I started small, showing up with nicer wine, bringing fancy desserts. But as time went on, I leaned into it. Designer scarves for Rosa. When Angela mentioned student loans, I paid them off quietly. She cried and hugged me so tight I couldn't breathe. And I thought, this is what family feels like. Then came the requests. A broken fridge? I bought them a new one. Dishwasher issues? Fixed it. Luca's cousin needed a job? I created one at my company. Every Sunday there seemed to be a new crisis, and I threw money at it because that's what family does, right? I even gave Luca a job, even though his resume was thinner than printer paper. I told myself it was an investment in our future. But last year everything crashed down. My company came under a hostile takeover. Suddenly, I was pulling 18-hour days, barely sleeping, glued to phone calls with lawyers and board members. I begged Luca to let me skip Sunday dinners for a while until things stabilized. The look on his face cut me in half. Money isn't more important than family, he said. Later that night, Rosa texted me a sad face emoji and told me she understood that in America, business comes first. The guilt nearly broke me. So I compromised. I started showing up to dinners with my laptop, sneaking calls between courses. Everyone would just shrug and slip into Italian while I typed away, and I was too exhausted to notice. That's when I had the idea, I would learn Italian. Not just the basics, I wanted to really learn it. I wanted to prove I wasn't just some American girl pretending to belong. I wanted to surprise them, to show them I was family. I studied on red-eye flights, in the back of Ubers, every spare second. Then Rosa got sick. They said she needed $60,000 for a special surgery not covered by insurance. I wrote the check without hesitation. What else could I do? But the tension kept building. One Sunday, I tried to leave dinner early for an emergency board meeting. Luca exploded. My mother could die, and you're worried about money, he screamed across the table. So I stayed. I always stayed. By then, I'd spent nearly $1 million on his family. New cars in their driveway. Designer handbags. His brother somehow climbing to VP in my company despite barely showing up to work. Luca himself using the company card like it was his personal piggy bank. But I told myself, this is what love looks like. This is family. And then came the night everything changed. I'd just closed the biggest deal of my career. I was flying high, racing to Sunday dinner with a glow I hadn't felt in months. I had a plan. Tonight, I'd finally surprise them with my Italian. Tonight, I'd tell them about the Christmas trip I was gifting the entire family, an all-expenses-paid luxury vacation to Italy itself. I walked in, heart pounding, ready to reveal my secret. They were already mid-conversation in Italian. And for the first time, I understood every word. "The stupid cow gave us another 60,000, Rosa was saying with a smirk. "There was never any surgery." Angela laughed. I can't believe she actually believed it. Rich Americans are so gullible. My legs went cold. Giovanni muttered, "How much longer does Luca have to keep pretending with this pathetic girl?" "Just until the wedding," Luca replied smoothly. "Then I'll get half her company in the divorce. Julia understands the plan." Julia? Who the hell was Julia? That's when they noticed me in the doorway. Rosa was the first to rise, beaming as if nothing had been said. She cupped my cheeks and kissed both sides. "Cara, how is work?" she asked sweetly in English. I forced a smile while inside, everything in me shattered. Because I wasn't their bella ragazza. I was just their walking wallet. And that night, as I sat through dinner pretending not to understand while they laughed at me in the language I had worked so hard to learn, one thought kept echoing in my mind. I thought I'd already hit bottom. But I had no idea what was still coming. That night, after dinner, I went home and sat in the dark with a glass of wine that tasted like nothing. My hand shook so badly I almost dropped the glass. My ears were still ringing with Luca's voice. "Just until the wedding. Then I'll get half her company in the divorce. Julia understands the plan." Julia. I couldn't stop repeating that name in my head like a broken record. Julia. Who was she? His mistress? His real girlfriend? His business partner? Whoever she was, she knew more about my relationship than I did. I wanted to scream. To smash something. To call Luca right then and demand answers. But I didn't. Instead, I forced myself to breathe. To sit there in silence. Because if I'd learned one thing in business, it was this: power doesn't belong to the loudest person in the room. It belongs to the quiet one who's taking notes. So that's what I did. I started taking notes. The next Sunday, I showed up as if nothing had happened. Same routine: a bottle of Chianti, a box of pastries from the bakery they liked. Rosa kissed my face, Luca held my hand, Angela pulled me aside to whisper about some investment opportunity. I smiled, nodded, laughed at their jokes. But inside, I was ice. Every time they slipped into Italian, I understood every cutting word. I heard Rosa call me idiota. I heard Maria say I was as dumb as a bottle of vodka. I heard Giovanni boast about how much money they'd squeezed out of me. And I just kept smiling. I don't know what they saw when they looked at me, and maybe a gullible rich girl desperate for family. Maybe an ATM with legs. But what they didn't see was that my mind was already working, already calculating. 3 weeks later, I confirmed Julia's identity. She wasn't just some fling. She was Luca's business partner. She ran a small design studio, funded entirely, I later discovered, with money siphoned from my company. I found photos online of her and Luca smiling at wine bars, kissing outside her apartment, celebrating anniversaries I never knew about. And that's when the tears finally stopped. I wasn't weak. I wasn't naive. I had just forgotten who I was. I wasn't some desperate little girl begging for scraps of affection. I was the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company. I had survived boardroom wars and cutthroat investors. And now I had a new battlefield. Their Sunday dinners. So I kept showing up. Kept smiling. Kept listening. Every cruel word they thought was hidden became another weapon in my pocket. Her money won't last forever. Luca better lock her down soon. She's too busy with work to notice his with Julia. Every insult was fuel. Every laugh at my expense was kindling. They thought I was too stupid to notice. They thought I was too desperate to leave. And that was their mistake. One night after dinner, when Luca fell asleep on my couch, I crept into the office and started pulling records. Credit card statements. emails, security footage. Every client dinner he'd charged that was actually a date with Julia. Every 5-star watch or luxury bag he'd billed to the company. Every suspicious payment to his brother. By the time the sun came up, I had a binder full of evidence. And that was just the beginning. Because then Rosa mentioned something new, their family business. A side hustle selling handbags. What she didn't tell me was that the handbags were fake, counterfeit designer knockoffs being shipped in from overseas. I found out when Luca's cousin bragged about how the dumb American girl had funded their entire first batch. I should have been furious. I should have confronted them right there. But instead, I leaned in. "Oh wow," I said sweetly, "these look so real. You know, I have contacts in Europe. Maybe I could help you expand." Their eyes lit up with greed. Giovanni started calculating out loud how many bags they could sell in Milan. Maria whispered about doubling prices for naive tourists. They had no idea I was recording everything on my phone from inside my purse. And as I sat there, smiling at the family that had been using me for 2 years, something inside me hardened. I didn't want revenge just for myself anymore. I wanted to destroy the whole rotten structure they had built, the lies, the manipulation, the fake love they wrapped me in like a boa constrictor. They wanted me at the table every Sunday? Fine. I'd sit at the table. I'd pour the wine. I'd laugh at their jokes. But I wasn't their wallet anymore. I was the storm they never saw coming. And soon, in front of their entire extended family, I would finally show them who they had been messing with. Because if they wanted to play with fire, I was about to burn the whole house down. I used to believe I was hard to break. When my dad died and left me his company at 21, everyone expected me to crumble. A college dropout with no MBA, no corporate experience. I was supposed to be a disaster story, another spoiled kid tanking her inheritance. Instead, I pulled all-nighters, taught myself everything I didn't know, and turned that company into something worth fighting over. I thought that proved I was strong. That no one could touch me. But sitting at Luca's family dinners, smiling while they mocked me in a language they thought I didn't understand? That cut deeper than any boardroom betrayal ever could. Because business rivals never pretended to love me first. I started remembering things I hadn't let myself think about in years. Like when I was 11 and my mom forgot my birthday. My siblings threw me at a party, but really it was just them dropping hints about how much cooler it would have been if I'd gotten them gift cards. I remember blowing out a candle stuck into a half-melted cupcake and wishing for a family that actually wanted me. Years later, when Rosa kissed my cheeks and called me her daughter, it felt like that wish had finally come true. Now, every memory felt poisoned. I couldn't sleep. I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling replaying their words, idiota, stupida, walking wallet. And in the middle of that sleepless fog, my plan started forming. It began with Julia. I hired a private investigator, something I'd never done before but wish I had years ago. Within 2 weeks, I had photos of her and Luca kissing outside a bar in Manhattan, shopping for rings in Soho, even celebrating anniversaries. My PI found joint bank accounts, a condo Luca had bought her using company funds, and emails about their wedding in the spring, scheduled conveniently after he'd divorce me and cash in on half my assets. Every photo made me colder. Every document sharpened me. I wasn't just betrayed. I was a mark in a long-running con. So I doubled down. I started recording every Sunday dinner. My phone hidden in my bag captured hours of conversations, plans for their knockoff handbag empire, jokes about my stupid American money, whispers about how Luca would propose to me by New Year's Eve to lock it down. And the more I listened, the more ruthless I became. I played along. I asked about their fake handbag business, pretending to be fascinated. I suggested maybe they bring some inventory to Europe someday, knowing full well that smuggling counterfeit goods across borders is a serious crime. Their eyes gleamed like kids at Christmas. Giovanni even started calculating how many suitcases they could fill. I nodded along, offering to cover baggage fees. Inside, I was already drafting an email to Italian customs. The irony wasn't lost on me. They thought I was desperate for family, but really, I was setting them up with the precision of a chess player. Every word I spoke, every smile, every gift, another piece sliding into place. But there were moments when the mask nearly slipped. Like when Luca looked at me one night, his hand on mine, and whispered, "I don't know what I'd do without you." His eyes were so convincing, I almost believed him. Almost. That was the moment I remembered the bike. When I was 12, my mom and siblings had gotten me a pink bike for my birthday. The one thing I wanted. My older brother asked if he could ride it first. I said yes, of course, I always said yes. He wheeled it into the street, right in front of a garbage truck, and let it get crushed into scrap metal. He laughed while I sobbed. That was the day I learned that not everyone who smiles at you means well. And now here I was, 23 years old, sitting across from another smiling thief. The difference was, I wasn't 12 anymore. And this time, I wasn't going to cry. I was going to make them regret underestimating me. So I kept building the plan. I had my lawyers quietly freeze the company accounts Luca had access to. I let him keep using his login, not knowing every email and file he touched was being monitored. I compiled a folder of fraudulent charges, dinners with Julia disguised as client meetings, weekend trips logged as business travel, luxury watches billed to the company. Over $200,000, neatly documented. Meanwhile, the Romano family kept laughing in Italian while I played the fool. But behind my smile, I knew something they didn't. Christmas was coming. And with it, the perfect stage. Because I wasn't just planning to expose Luca. I was planning to burn down the entire house of cards, in front of their whole extended family, in the country they thought made them untouchable. I bought the villa in Tuscany outright instead of just renting it. Had cameras installed in the dining room. Stocked the place with wine and food, all the better for them to relax and brag while being recorded. They thought it was a vacation. A gift from the stupid American girl who was desperate for love. But really, it was an execution ground. And every Sunday dinner leading up to it, I sat at their table, sipping wine, nodding politely, and thinking about how much louder their silence would be once the truth came out. I thought back to 11-year-old me, blowing out that candle on a cupcake, wishing for a family. Well, I'd gotten my wish. Now I was going to bury it. Because family is everything, right? And they were about to learn what happens when you mistake family for prey. Christmas Eve in Tuscany felt like the calm before a hurricane. The Romano villa was glowing with lights, laughter spilling out of every room. Luca's extended family had arrived from all over, cousins from Philadelphia, uncles from New Jersey, distant relatives from Florence. By evening, there were nearly 60 people crammed into the house. The dining table sagged under mountains of food. Candles flickered, wine poured like water, and I played the perfect hostess. I smiled as Rosa told me, in English, how grateful she was for everything. "You work too hard, Cara. This vacation will be good for you." She patted my cheek like she always did, motherly and warm. But when she turned away, she switched to Italian. "She's pathetic. So desperate for love. We'll bleed her dry." I sipped my wine and pretended not to understand. My hand shook only slightly. By midnight, the feast was in full swing. Laughter, music, champagne toasts. Luca pulled me close, kissing my cheek as his uncle joked about how lucky he was. Lucky. That word almost made me laugh. Because in less than an hour, their luck would run out. When the antipasti plates were cleared, I rose to my feet, glass in hand. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my voice came out calm. "I want to thank all of you," I began in English, "for welcoming me into your family. These past 2 years have taught me so much about what family means." Smiles, nods, raised glasses. Rosa even dabbed at her eyes like I was her precious daughter. "Family," I continued, "means trust. Honesty. Protecting each other. Celebrating together. supporting each other through failure. Salute! Giovanni boomed. The family cheered, clinking glasses. I let the room quiet again before I added softly. But most importantly, family means never mistaking kindness for stupidity. Never mistaking love for weakness. A ripple of confusion spread through the room. Forks stilled. Glasses froze mid-air. And then, in flawless Italian, I said, "I'm so disappointed to learn what you all really think of me." The silence that followed was deafening. Rosa's face drained of color. Che cosa," she whispered. "Oh yes," I continued smoothly, still in Italian. "I've understood every word for months now. Every insult. Every lie. Every plan to drain me dry and throw me away." Gasps erupted. Maria's fork clattered against her plate. Giovanni's jaw clenched. Luca's hand shot out to grab mine under the table, a warning squeeze. "You speak Italian," he hissed. "Fluently," I said, ripping my hand away. I pulled my phone from my purse and hit play. The room filled with Rosa's own voice, clear as crystal. The stupid cow gave us another 60,000. There was never any surgery. Gasps. Murmurs. A few shocked relatives crossed themselves. "That's fake," Giovanni sputtered. "Is it?" I asked coolly. I connected my laptop to the villa's speakers. "Let's listen to some greatest hits, shall we?" For the next 15 minutes, recording after recording spilled into the candlelit dining room. Luca bragging about divorcing me for half my company. Maria mocking me as "you vodka stupid." Giovanni laughing about my money. Rosa gleefully calling me her walking wallet. By the time the last clip ended, the room was ice cold. Extended relatives shifted uncomfortably, some whispering prayers, others glaring at the core family like they'd just realized they'd been dragged into a scandal. "You can't prove anything in court," Luca said desperately, his face pale. "Those recordings won't hold." "Maybe not," I said, switching back to English so everyone could understand. "But the embezzlement records will. Over $200,000 in fraudulent charges traced directly to you, Luca. Your company email access was revoked this morning. Check your inbox, you'll find your termination letter, along with a notice that you're being investigated." Luca's face crumbled. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Rosa's voice cut through the silence. "We're family. You can't do this to us." I turned to her, my voice steady. "Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't lie. Family doesn't use love as a weapon." Angela shot to her feet, face twisted. "What about our business? You invested in us. Your counterfeit handbag operation?" I laughed, bitter and sharp. "Italian customs is very interested in that little venture. They know exactly what you smuggled into this country. Every bag, every suitcase, every name on the passenger list. And tomorrow morning, they'll be waiting." Gasps. Shouts. A few chairs scraped back in panic. "You set us up," Luca whispered, his voice trembling. "No," I corrected. "You set yourselves up. I just made sure you'd face the consequences." Their faces were masks of horror, disbelief, rage. Giovanni slammed his fist on the table, sending glasses toppling. Rosa sobbed, muttering prayers through her tears. Maria cursed at me in Italian so viciously the younger cousins were ushered out of the room. I raised my glass one last time. "Merry Christmas," I said coldly. "Consider this my gift. The truth." And I drank. For a long, shattering moment, no one moved. Then the room erupted into chaos. Shouts, accusations, relatives turning on each other. Some stormed out in shame, others screamed at Rosa and Giovanni for dragging the family name through the mud. Luca just sat there, staring at me with hollow eyes. "Did you ever love me?" he asked finally, his voice breaking. I held his gaze, my face unreadable. Every moment was real for me, I said softly. And that's what makes this your greatest cruelty. You took someone who loved you, and you turned her into this. I gestured to myself, calm, cold, untouchable. Congratulations, Luca. You created exactly what you accused me of. Someone who puts business before family. Because you taught me family was just another business. And then I turned my back on them all, leaving their Christmas feast untouched and their empire of lies in ruins. Christmas night bled into chaos. By the time I left the dining room, the Romano family was tearing itself apart. Rosa shrieking, Giovanni shouting, Maria cursing, Luca pale and silent like the ground had been ripped out from under him. I didn't stick around to watch them devour each other. I'd already arranged my escape. At 7 a.m., a car I'd booked days earlier arrived at the villa. My suitcase was waiting by the door. I slipped out while the family was still locked in a storm of arguments and pleas. By 8 o'clock sharp, the police arrived. My lawyer texted me updates from Florence. Officers escorted the Romanos out, one by one. Rosa wailed about her rights as a grandmother. Giovanni smashed a chair against the wall, then collapsed when they opened the luggage stuffed with counterfeit bags. Maria sobbed as the officers flipped through receipts of sales she'd already made. And Luca didn't fight. He just stared at the ground as handcuffs clicked shut. Customs had everything they needed. Counterfeit goods worth more than 50,000 euros. Documents proving commercial intent. Add that to the embezzlement evidence, the recordings, the fraudulent charges, their empire of lies collapsed in a single morning. Extended relatives scattered like rats. Some fled the villa before dawn, desperate to avoid being connected. Others pretended they had no idea, even though I had hours of recordings proving otherwise. By noon, the villa was silent. Empty. Just a husk of stone walls and broken promises. And I wasn't there to see it. Instead, I was in Florence, sipping coffee at a cafe overlooking the Arno. The Duomo glowed in the distance, and for the first time in years, I felt my lungs expand without the weight of guilt or lies pressing them down. My phone buzzed endlessly. Unknown numbers. Please. Threats. Promises. Even Julia left me a voicemail, her voice shaking with rage. She'd just learned that every condo payment, every dinner, every designer bag had been funded with money Luca stole from me. Without him, she was broke, facing eviction, maybe even charges as an accessory. Look what you've done to me, she screamed through the phone. I almost laughed. Look what they'd done to themselves. Over the next few days, the fallout spread like wildfire. My CFO called to confirm that forensic accountants had uncovered $500,000 siphoned through fake vendor accounts. My lawyers filed civil suits. The board voted unanimously to pursue criminal charges. Luca's passport was flagged. He wouldn't be leaving Italy anytime soon. Rosa sent emails from the police holding cell, alternating between begging and cursing. Giovanni's brother called me from Jersey, accusing me of ruining a family. Maria even tried to offer me information, anything to save herself, but by then, I didn't need her. I had more than enough. The villa itself? I had it listed within a week. Let someone else fill its halls with genuine love and laughter. I had no desire to keep a monument to betrayal. Still, I couldn't resist visiting once before leaving Italy. The property manager walked me through. Broken furniture, shattered glasses, stains on the rugs. The remnants of their downfall lingered everywhere. But I didn't feel sorrow. Only clarity. Because standing in those echoing halls, I realized something: they hadn't taken anything from me that mattered. Yes, I'd lost money. Yes, I'd lost years. But money can be rebuilt. Time can be reclaimed. What they couldn't touch was the part of me that kept giving, that kept loving, that kept hoping for something real. That was mine. Untouchable. The morning I left Florence, I watched the sun rise over the river. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who bought $300 bottles of wine for people who laughed at her behind her back, who begged for approval, who believed family had to be earned with gifts. She was gone. In her place was someone stronger. Someone who knew that real family isn't about blood or marriage or Sunday dinners. It's about truth. About respect. About love that doesn't come with conditions. And I promised myself I would find that someday. Not in people like Luca. Not in families like the Romanos. But somewhere. As my plane lifted off, I glanced out at the Tuscan hills one last time. Down there, the Romanos were facing charges, lawyers, prison. Their Christmas vacation had turned into their worst nightmare. And me? I was finally free. Because they thought kindness was weakness. They thought love was stupidity. But they forgot that sometimes, the kindest person in the room is also the one holding the match. And when the smoke clears, they're the only ones left choking.